Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 82 of the Whatnauts review show, where each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a comic, a TV show, movie, who knows? We rate it, we watch it, we do what we have to do, and come back here and talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined, as always, by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how was your weekend?
Yes. It's been good. I'm having a Halloween party tonight, so I spent the weekend shopping and cooking and cleaning and decorating and doing all of that preparation. I'm going to make a dessert charcuterie board.
That sounds amazing. I was gonna ask if you had like baked some kind of special Halloween cookies or a cake or something.
Well, it's red velvet cupcakes, and I'm going to make half white icing, half black icing, and try and swirl them together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Should be fun. Be fun. I like that idea. We've done Halloween parties in the past with the roommates that I've had, but the parties have kind of gone downhill as we've gotten older. Just like less and less people started showing up of like, oh, well, I have my husband to take care of, or I have a baby now, I have this, and it's just like, okay, we're at that age now. So
yeah, thankfully I live in a medium-sized apartment, so I kind of do have to cap my guest list. So like if only 10 people show up, perfect, because that's as many chairs as I have.
There you go. That sounds fun. But this week, we are no longer doing horror month stuff. We are now in November. But if you guys missed it, you guys should go check out the horror episodes that we did all during the month of October. There's 5 episodes in total, from Dracula to the BBC Ghost Stories movie that they did with Martin
all kinds of spooks.
Freeman. All kinds of spooks, as Melissa just said. So yeah, this week we are talking about a crime show called Happy Valley. This is one that I pitched. I've seen this on Netflix, hadn't dived into it. You guys know me, I'm a big crime fan, so I was like, hey, this one is maybe one we should check out. By the way, Melissa, your camera just went off.
I didn't touch anything. Like, I popped my knuckles and my computer, I guess, got so scared. It's like, well, I'd better stop using the webcam. She's too intimidating to be seen.
Right? So we are watching Happy Valley. I haven't seen this before, but it's kind of been on my radar, though it hasn't really been high up on my priority list. It was just one I saw, and I was just like, maybe I'll get to it one day. But you ended up picking this one when I pitched it this past week. What made you decide to pick this one?
Honestly, it just sounded more interesting than Initial D. Again, despite the fact that you've pitched some variant of Initial D to me 2 or 3 times.
Twice now, I think.
It's still not for me, I don't think. And then it was like a manga about a samurai. And like we'd been doing a lot of comics lately. So I'm like, okay, enough print media. I don't want to like watch or read about the car race.
And it had been a while.
The crime show is left.
They did a TV show too, so.
Yeah, and then I did a quick Google of it, and I saw that it had really, really high ratings. I'm like, okay, now I'm legitimately intrigued.
Good. Well, yeah, so we watched season 1 of Happy Valley. It is a 6 episode British crime show that takes place in a small town. The main character is a cop. She is kind of down on her luck. I don't know if that's, or she's had a rough go of it recently. She's not necessarily down on her luck, but she's a single mother, kind of, or a single grandma, who is
she is raising her grandson after her daughter committed suicide shortly after he was born 8 years ago.
Yeah. and she's living with her sister and stuff like that. And she is a cop in a small town, and there is a kidnapping that happens in the town, and she gets wrapped up in that case, and it ends up being a lot closer to home than she realizes at first. So it is an interesting one. This was it was very good. I really liked how well written it was, but I also have some like major problems with it. I'm really conflicted with this. It's really good. I highly recommend it. I know it won a ton of awards and stuff like that. It's debuted on BBC One on 29th of April, second series debut, blah blah blah. In May 2015, Happy Valley won the BAFTA award for best drama series. So it's won some stuff. There's a second series that's also available on Netflix, and a third is in development.
Ooh.
So there you go. Melissa, what did you think of the show? What were your kind of spoiler-free general thoughts?
It took me a little while to get into it just due to the just gruesome nature of the crimes. It's an uncomfortable watch for a lot of the time, but like then it hit a tipping point where I'm way more enthralled than I am bummed out. And this is a very impressive show.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what it does with character and structure that I really admired.
Okay. Good stuff. Yeah. It's I think important to note that this is, I think, more intense than I thought it was going to be.
But also, when it first starts, it's more comedic than I expected. Like, I was expecting this to be a straightforward drama. Like, last year we watched a French crime show called The Forest that was very straightforward and dramatic. Like, I don't know if there's a chuckle anywhere in there. Yeah. This is a little bit more lighthearted at the beginning, mixed with the gruesome crimes. And then that kind of dies away as she gets deeper into the plot.
Yeah, and I was kind of expecting something more like The Forest, maybe not as super serious or something, who knows, but I was kind of expecting it to be like, excuse me just a sec. Ooh, I sneezed. Okay. I was kind of expecting more of like a small town is rocked by this crime that they didn't expect, and it's taking a toll on the town as a whole. Because that's usually what you get when it's a small town, right? Because everyone knows each other, and it's like, oh, that was Sarah. We all knew Sarah. Sarah was the one that was the victim there. She was just here last week, you know? Which is, we actually don't get much of the town that they live in. So I think it's a little bit less of that.
So there is a larger problem of this town is overrun by drugs. There's a lot of drug activity going on in the town. And then there is that kidnapping, but it's this small time crime that like everybody is trying to keep private. Like the people who have the kidnapping happen to them, like they don't go to the police right away. So like there is the kidnapping, but like so few people know about it. And then the drug thing is just like, well, that's just life around here. So there isn't that big, like, our neighborhood calm is shattered type of crime until a couple episodes in.
So I still really liked it. I thought I don't know if pacing is the right word, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that more in depth in a bit. But I don't know if the pacing was exactly what it should have been. There were some weird episode structures of just where things ended, where things included, stuff like that. So there you go. Anything else to say about this show before we get into spoilers and stuff like that, Melissa?
Oh, I'm eager to talk about it more in depth. Let's trudge forward. Not trudge forward.
Sounds good. Let's get into some housekeeping first, and then we will get into spoilers. If you guys did not know, we have multiple podcasts here at The Whatnauts. You guys can go check them all out at our website, thewhatnauts.com, or you can search us on your podcasting platform of choice. Just type in The Whatnauts, and all of our shows will pop up there for you guys to check out. And if you like what we do, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is where you can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can throw us some pocket change. You guys can get episodes early. You guys can get exclusive content. We have all sorts of stuff for you guys to check out. But we wanted to give a big thank you to the patrons at the $5 tier. So thank you to Sam and thank you to Christine for checking us out and liking us enough to send us some money each month. We thank you guys so much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's get into spoilers. All right. Where do we want to start with this? Because it's a fairly short one. You would like to start with
I want to start with Claire, because when you first pitched this series to me and you read that description out, it was like Catherine is an older policewoman dealing with raising her grandson and fighting drugs in the community, and she lives with her sister who is a recovering heroin addict. And it made the sister sound like she was a major point of drama for the series, and she isn't. Claire is a delight.
Almost the exact
she is so
opposite of that.
Yes, she's so level-headed and kind and supportive. And the one time she kind of really messes up is when she tells Daniel that Claire and Richard are still sleeping together. But even then she's like, this might be a mistake, but I really want a second opinion on how to handle this situation. And then she immediately regrets it. Okay, that might have been a step too far. Let me know what I can do to fix this. I was not at all expecting the recovering drug addict to be the voice of reason in the entire show so consistently.
Which they don't even really make that a point. Because I'll be honest, I don't remember saying that when I read the description of whatever I read there, and I don't think I picked up on that in the show. But. Yeah, it's one of those things of drugs is a major problem. I think they mention it at the start of the first episode that her sister is a recovering addict, and that's it. That's about it. And then the rest is she is kind of the stay-at-home mom. But not in a well, you're a drug addict, so of course you're gonna be staying at home doing nothing. But she seems fine. She seems totally normal.
She seems really healthy and well adjusted, and it's not clear how long she's been in recovery and when she came to live with Catherine and Ryan. But she seems a perfectly normally functioning member of society, which not to say that a drug addict couldn't be. That's just not what I was expecting a drama narrative to do with that as the starting point for the character.
Sure. Yeah.
She's really not the source of any conflict except for that little social faux pas at the end that kind of brings out some information that Catherine didn't want certain people to know. But even then it's just whoops, I was legitimately trying to help you out. For that to be the most intense wrongdoing she has, I think it was really interesting. I really liked just what a lovely character Claire was. I think she was my favorite.
She is a fantastic character for sure. I think for me, one of the things that I was maybe a little confused about with this show is that the first episode starts so strongly with the main character basically being like, oh, well, you think you have problems? I have problems too. And then, except for the whole fact about her daughter, like, we don't hear much of that. I mean, maybe that comes about in season 2, but I felt like they tried to paint Catherine as this, like, older woman that is still really badass and she can do all of this stuff, but you're expecting her not to be, because she's a single grandmother. Her daughter committed suicide. She's living with her sister, who's a recovering heroin addict, and all of this stuff. And it's like, oh, she's going through some shit. And then it almost, like, I think my biggest problem with the show is that then leads into 2 different stories that I don't think meshed well together. They have the kidnapping, which is kind of what the whole first half of the show is about, and then there's the second half of the show, which is like the final 2 episodes, and it's more about her relation to the father of her grandson. And there's almost an abrupt change. Like, at the end of episode 4, the kidnapping is basically solved and it moves on. And I was kind of taken aback by that. It was strange to me.
I wasn't expecting them to rescue the kidnapping victim that early in the show. That is at the end of episode 4. And I don't know if, like, within episodes, within scenes, I don't think I have a problem with the pacing. But the show does take place it uses time weirdly. Like, the first 4 episodes takes place over, like, I think it's actually like a little bit more than a week, but it feels quicker than what they tell you it actually is. So, first 4 episodes are about a week. By the end of episode 6, now, like, 2 or 3 months have passed. All of a sudden at episode 5, like, time starts stretching out. And, I can't believe Tommy is still alive at the end of the last episode, because he was stabbed 3 or 4 weeks ago and hasn't had anything except for band-aids and painkillers since then. And, like, then they go and find Lewis and Brett's bodies in the apartment. It's like,
disguise thing. So it sounds like he's been going out to, like, scrounge for food and stuff like that. But it's still just like, I think the thing to me is that the second half of that show could have been its own season of just, like, the aftermath of this case. Now that we know that the kidnapper is also the father of her grandson, right? Like, that's like season 2 could be finding him. Like, now there is this hunt or this kidnapper of this small town. Like, that could be a season by itself. And they kind of shoehorn it into the last 2 seasons. And I just thought it was very strange to put that in there.
I think it worked on me. I think I understand everything they were doing, but it is definitely, I've not seen another show paced quite like this. Like, I've never seen that long of a gap between we've recovered the victim is safe, and then 6 weeks later, finally, we have taken in the culprit.
Yeah. I don't know. There's nothing coming to mind there of, like, stuff that does something similar.
The first, like, 4 episodes are this sort of chase, and then episode 5, it slows down and it really becomes a character study, like, just on Catherine.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't think it's bad, but it's just odd. Like, it's a new storytelling style and format we haven't quite seen before.
Or just like I think if they had maybe meshed the kind of story beats of those last two like into the first four episodes, this idea, because they kind of play with the idea. What's her grandson's name? Do we remember?
Ryan.
So if like they kind of do the whole thing of like, who's my father? Where is he? And he wants to play football with the one guy, and it's like, that's one thing. I think if they had mixed that with the whole thing that Tommy is back in town, he finds out really soon that, hey, maybe he has a son. I think if that plot thread had been pulled in earlier, it might help it mix together better, and then have the kidnapping case wrap up at the end of episode 6 when they also capture him. Like, I just think in terms of storytelling, that would wrap everything up better, if that makes sense. But then again, I'm not a writer, so what do I know?
I will say I really liked how the first half of this series was structured,
Yes.
where you have the kidnapping plot, and then because the family's like, okay, we're not bringing this to police, we're just going to handle this ourselves. Like, we're following this kidnapping plot, and then we're following Catherine's life as a police officer, and they do not directly cross over. Our main protagonist is not aware of the main conflict until halfway into the series.
Yeah.
You just watch these two stories, like, slowly, like, there's little accidents and mistakes and things slowly, like, bump up against each other. Like,
Which
I really
love
like that. And I really
Yeah.
like that Catherine's almost in this, like, case of the week kind of, procedural story where it's like, okay, we've got another person off their mind on drugs, I have to go talk to them. Like, and then we've got like the local councilman who she finds cocaine in his car, and then it seems like her higher ups are trying to brush that away because the councilman has always been supportive of the police department. Like, she's just living this episodic life until this serialized kidnapping plot after a couple episodes like crashes into her. Like, I really like that tension of eventually these two things are going to meet each other, and we're just watching these like coincidences, like Claire and Helen both volunteering at the same charity kitchen, and Helen mentions this to Claire, who brings it to Catherine, and like then everything comes together.
Yeah.
I like that slow progression too. And now she's on the case.
Yep. I think one thing that the show does incredibly well is basically give you multiple characters that have major stories in this show in such a short amount of time, because it's only 6 episodes, but we get Catherine, we get the guy who is the accountant of the guy that has his daughter kidnapped, all because he kind of started it and was like, what if I kidnap your daughter and take the ransom money as my raise instead, since you didn't give me the raise that I asked for. And he they have his whole story, and then there's the story of the one of the kidnappers who is just seeing all of this stuff go wrong, and he just can't handle it. And it he's like, it's not supposed to be like this. Like, this was supposed to be really simple, but now you're doing things that I don't agree with, and it's like he just has this mental breakdown as he kind of comes up against Tommy, who is the one that's kind of throwing the wrench in this whole thing. And yeah, for only 6 episodes and having those like 4 or 5 stories going on at the same time, it all works really well in concert together. So I liked that a lot, for sure. Actually, yeah, let's keep talking about the kidnapper dude, because I think that was maybe one of my favorite stories of this, or like favorite perspectives of this thing. Because here's this criminal who is just, he's not a good person, but yet he meets someone who he thinks is so much worse than him, and he's having this like crisis of conscience of just like, hey, I'll kidnap, but I'm drawing the line at rape. Like, we don't do that.
Yeah, and he's like, well, aren't we going to feed her? Are we going to untie her from the chair so she can use the bathroom? Like, we can't keep her in the basement overnight. It's freezing down there. I have to give her a sleeping bag. Like, he's like, okay, I understand. Yeah, I'm a criminal. I joined a criminal enterprise, sure, but I'm really just here to do the job, sir. Like, just keep my head down, do a legitimate job, and really not go overboard with anything. Like, he's doing the bare minimum of criminal activity. Yeah. He's like, well, we're still going to act civilly, aren't we? Like, we have to treat her like a real human being.
We are
like,
gentlemen,
not
thieves.
Monsters. Exactly. He's signed up to be a criminal. Tommy Lee Royce is a monster, and he's like, hold on. I need to get out of here, and he doesn't know how. Like, he doesn't know how to escape from the trajectory of this scheme they've all gone in on.
Yeah, and that to me is kind of an interesting narrative beat of just like, hey, here's a character who is trapped within his circumstances. Sure, it's kind of his own making, but now he's seeing that the like that he just can't jump high enough to reach the ledge of like where he needs to get out of. And yeah, like it's just you see him like sinking farther and farther in just because he's being pulled down by Tommy, and it's really tragic and it's sad. And then to see where his story ends up, that him and Tommy finally had a confrontation and Tommy murdered him, and it's just oy, this is not, it's very tragic, but for some reason to me that's kind of one of the more interesting story beats of to just watch this person sinking.
Yes, I like the bad guy encounters someone worse, and then you're on his side. You're like, Lewis is a good boy, and I want the best for him. Yeah. This man who deals drugs and helped kidnap a lady. And then he just like gets stabbed in the night off screen, and like that's it. That's the end of Lewis.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of fitting that he doesn't get like a proper tragic end, because he is just this low life. Yeah. He's just a slightly more honorable low life than the rest of them. Also, their friend is Mr. Hickey from The Terror, and he has exactly the same hair and beard stylings, but he's wearing modern clothes. And I just like screamed when he showed up. It was like I'd seen a ghost.
Yeah. I wonder if they were filming around the same time, or like one shortly after the other, or something.
No, really? Because you said this won the 2015 BAFTAs. This is probably from 2014, and The Terror just came out in like
that's true
last year. Unless they shelved The Terror for a long time.
Who knows? Yeah, you messaged that to me. You were like, the bad guy from The Terror showed up, and I messaged back. I was like, wow, I didn't know there was a giant, like, mystical beast within this show. I knew
the
exactly
drug dealer's
who you meant.
Toonbach.
I was like, there's a Yeti in this show? A giant polar bear who's attacking them all? What are you talking about, Melissa? At that time, I hadn't started the show, so I finally got to watch it. And there's Mr. Hickey, and he is still being Mr. Hickey. So,
Yep.
there you go. It was good.
His rise to power. He's like a true lowlife in this. And then you see him in the Terror. It's like, well, you're still despicable, but you're like at least trying to be a leader.
Yeah. He was like, I'm trying to get away from this godforsaken country. I'm gonna go enlist and join the Navy. And then they send him back in time. And
Well, we're gonna send you back in time. Then you have to kill another man and take his identity.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and it was a weird thing. I also didn't expect that character to show back up at the end of the show.
Yeah.
It didn't really seem like he had a connection to them. He just happened to be like standing there that one day in that one scene, and then afterwards it's like, oh, you guys know each other. Okay.
Of course.
Sure.
Of course you do. I liked that. I did like the instances of how small of a town this was, where like this street punk shows up again helping the bad guys. Yeah. Or like when Claire's like, yeah, I work with Helen down at the soup kitchen, and this has not been introduced before, but you absolutely buy it as something both of these characters would be doing. Like everything made sense for the characters and for this setting.
Yeah. I agree. Let's talk about that spineless little accountant. Whatever his name was. What was his name?
Kevin. I think Kevin Weatherhill.
Yeah, let's see. Where is
he...
Kevin's name on? Yeah, Kevin Weatherhill, played by Steve Pemberton.
He makes a real turn because when he starts off, you're on his side. You want him to get that raise because all he wants it for is just, I want to send my daughter to a good school. And then you find out, like, oh, both our fathers started this company together, but then his dad cheated my dad, and so the son is cheating me now, and I should own half the company. I should already be making all this money. And we're like, yeah, okay, Kevin, get your money.
Yeah,
but then he's like, I'm gonna
yourself, Kevin. You got this.
But then he like arranges like, hey, criminals I have come to know, what if you kidnap my boss's daughter, and then he gives you all this money and then you give it to me? You're like, I don't know, Kevin, but all
Kevin,
right. And then you get to know Nevison better. It's like, I don't know, Kevin. And you get to go know Nevison better, and he's still a guy who's a little rough around the edges. He's kind of an old crank, but
yeah,
he's like, you're right. Like, he's talking with his wife. He's like, you're right. He truly is the backbone of this company. I am going to offer him a promotion. I'm going to pay the school fees for his daughter and the younger daughter when she's old enough to go to this school. Like, he really, like, Nevison really changes his game. And then you just watch Kevin, like, melt and sweat. You're like, oh no, you've really gotten into it now, Kevin. And then Kevin, like... does not try to dig himself back out. He does not. He's kind of like,
he's so shocked at like, oh shit, what do I do now? That he just doesn't move, and he just stays there. It's like, well, I guess I have to keep going with this because I don't know how to get out of it right now. So I think I need
and he's
to...
like, hey, Ashley, I think maybe I overestimated how much the Gallaghers are worth. Like, I don't really think this kidnapping operation is going to be worth the money we're going to get out of him. And Ashley's like, well, too late. We're already started. We're in it now.
Yeah. He was like, we already have her.
He makes that initial try, and then he's like, and then Kevin's just like, all right, well, I'm in on this. And then at the end, he has no remorse about it. He's like, well, Nevison, this is what you get. You should have just given me the raise originally.
And it's kind of funny too, because I like when he's finally decided to be like, I think I'm gonna fess up and just be like, that's what you get, bitch. He's still like, his wife has no faith in him. She's like, you can't hold character. Like you're a sniveling little like you're no one. You're not gonna you're not gonna do this. She's not that harsh, but she's still just like, I don't think you can do that. Like, you don't have it in you. And surprisingly enough, he manages to kind of do that, and it's this like, okay, Kevin, who are you?
Yeah, like once he realizes I am on this track, I can't change it, then he does like kind of own up to it, like,
yeah,
I am keeping this money, and I am going to throw
nowhere.
it back in Nevison's face. Even if he did reverse his original decision and come to me and say, I am taking leave, I want you to take my position while I'm gone, and you will eventually be promoted, and I will give you this money for, you to send your daughters to the good school. Like, Nevison went back on it. All the wrongdoing he did, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to make things as right as I can going forward. Like, Kevin is still thinking about that initial interaction where he's like, I'm sorry, I can't give you a raise, Kevin. That's all he can see anymore. And he's like, you did this to yourself.
Yeah.
This is the bed you have to lie in for not giving me a raise. Like, he's such a little weasel, but he sticks by this weaselness so strongly.
Yeah,
he doesn't.
exactly.
Once he gets past a certain point, he doesn't back out, and it's kind of interesting to watch. And also, like, his wife's trepidation of, I hate that you've done this, but we sincerely do need this money. Yeah. And now that we have it, what the heck else are we supposed to do with it? They're like, we can't burn it. It's money.
I kind of like his wife in that scenario too, because she is like typical, like, just, you get told this information and she panics. And she just has no idea what to. We need to go to the cops. We need to stop this. We need to do this. We need to do that. And she eventually is just like, well, can we keep it? Like, what? It's kind of nice having money. I thought that one scene of her on the phone being like, well, what if we just put small amounts into multiple bank accounts? Would that work? And it's like, oh, she's been thinking
like,
about
she's
this.
Trying to find a way to legitimize it. And
yeah,
like, you're not on Kevin's side, but you're kind of on his wife's side a little bit.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah,
you are a woman of
ailing. Yeah, like, she's a woman of ailing health. It seems like maybe she's not able to work. They have these 2 daughters they have to raise and send through school. Like, she starts thinking practically once they get into this. And she's like, I know it's wrong, but we do need this. We do need this.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting one. I have a question for you. Based off what we've seen in season 1, what do you envision season 2 to be about?
So I looked at just the basic, like, 2-sentence episode descriptions that Netflix had up for season 2. I am baffled that Tommy is still a character in season 2. And I just looked up this actor because he looked so much like the guy who played Luther in the Umbrella Academy. I'm like, is that guy?
James
It's
Norton
not. I think he just looks like him.
Name.
But I was looking him up, and I'm like, you were in 12 episodes out of 12? I'm really baffled that his character sticks around for that much longer. That the show is like, yes, this monster, Tommy Lee Royce, he's a top cast, main cast, still, he should be dead. He's still here. We're still following this man.
So I was expecting, because especially we hear that the town is infested by drugs. The kidnappers all seem to be distributors. They seem to be selling this stuff as well. And then there's a thing, I think at the end of episode 4 or start of episode 5, right after they free the daughter and they get her back to the thing. There's a scene in a coffee shop where I think the inspector comes to talk with Catherine, and he mentions something about, or maybe it's the journalist dude who's talking about like, hey, and then there's like, here's how they get all of the drugs into town and all of this stuff, and it happens like 4 times a week.
Her ex-husband was giving her like something very general along those lines earlier on. I think you are talking about like the inspector guy who's like, okay, the trucks with these chemicals like come in from Rotterdam, and then between Rotterdam and here they take the chemicals out and they load them with cocaine, and then once they get here they take the cocaine back out and then reload it with the chemicals so nobody knows anything has gone wrong.
Yeah, and so I was kind of expecting that to be what season 2 is about. We did not watch season 2, but that is where I would expect the direction of that season to go, especially since a whole bunch of these people are distributors in that town, and now the distributors are no longer there, right? It's like, oh, well, you've now disrupted our trade. We're going to kind of descend on this town and figure it out or fix it or somehow punish the cop that did this to our drug business. The guys we were familiar with were all middlemen. Like, Ashley is the boss of Tommy and Lewis, but like, there's plenty of people who out there that we don't see that Ashley works for, that Ashley is terrified of. Yeah. And I think the next season might just be, all right, we need a replacement Ashley. We're just going to slot another criminal into that spot, into that chain in our drug workflow. That's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Somehow dealing more with the drugs in the town than anything else. According to Wikipedia, that is not the case. And it says here, let me read you this. 18 months after the events of the first series, Catherine K. Wood is back at work and has won the Queen's Police Medal for gallantry for rescuing Anne Gallagher from Tommy Lee Royce, who is serving a life sentence in prison. And here's where boilers come in, which I guess is really only the setup for season 2. But when Royce's mother is killed, Catherine finds herself implicated in a string of murders. Which is then why Tommy Lee Royce is still a character, because it's his mother that is then murdered and stuff like that. But like, that is not the direction that I expected this show to go in at all. That's kind of wild. I do kind of, like I was talking about the first half of season 1, I do like that there are big things out there. Like, there's big threats, and we also have a protagonist that is working very hard to investigate things. You just have to wait for the right circumstances to line up for her to become aware of these things. Yeah. Like, everybody's just operating in these little circles around each other, and it's just it's like rotating orbits. Like, every once in a while, they're going to line up, and there's going to be an eclipse, and we're going to see each other and lock in, and that's where the conflict is. I like the slow build of these things happening and slowly running into each other. Yeah. I kind of like the slow burns that this show does. What I'd really like to learn more about is Catherine's higher-ups in the police, because she's so fervent about things. Like, I think we can, like, we're seeing them from Catherine's point of view, and it's kind of ambiguous, like,
okay, did they really destroy this bag of cocaine that they got from the councilman's car? Or is that guy being sincere when he's like, we didn't destroy it, it just became damaged during transport, and that's why it's no longer viable evidence. Or like when she's talking to her chief or whatever, and she's like, write these things down. Why aren't you doing these things to find Tommy Lee Royce? And she talks to that other inspector yet, and she talks to that other inspector later, and she's like, did he do those things yet? And he's like, I don't know, I'm sure he did. Like, we don't, because Catherine's so fervently like, we need to be doing everything possible as fast as possible. We need to get on this guy. And the other people are like, just a little bit more slower. Like, well, there's a lot of red tape and we have to talk to this person and get approval from this person. Like, from Catherine's perspective, they are bad guys, but we've yet to see how much of it is like legitimate, you know, dirty dealings and conspiracy and like being bought out and things like that. Like, how much of it is these are legitimately bad guys and how much of it is just, no, there's just a system we have to work through. Like, there's paperwork, we have to prioritize things and we just can't make that thing a priority right now. Like, I'm wondering how much is just a legitimate difference of opinions in how to run the law enforcement in this town and how much of it is, no, that guy is crooked.
Yeah. That's kind of one of the things that I secretly like about crime shows. I like all the politics within this stuff that is happening.
And like who has jurisdiction where. Yeah.
Like in that scene, I read that scene almost a little bit differently than you did, where it's like, hey, we're maybe a little more lax. There's more red tape. We'll get to it eventually, right? Slow and steady. Whereas I was like, it seemed like they were doing an evaluation of like, is she fit enough to go back to work after having this traumatic experience? So the fact that she is asking these things like, well, have we done X, Y, and Z? And then the guy sitting there like,
it's like, that's not really any of her business at that time.
Well, it's maybe not her business, but him also kind of realizing, oh shit, she's right. We haven't. She is doing good police work. Maybe I should write this down and get on that. Like, that to me was her being like, yes, I am still absolutely competent and can do this job. In fact, I'm better than anyone else here that has been doing nothing, apparently. So...
yeah, and it's real bold for her to go into this, like... this evaluation where, like, they're asking her questions is what it's supposed to be doing. Like, how are you feeling,
no,
Catherine?
Dad,
do you
what
feel
about
like you're
you?
up to coping with the stress of the job? And she's like, what are you doing? And they're like, I mean, I think we did this. Like, they're really taken aback. And we have yet to see, like the other people, like the higher ups, like they seem to really respect Catherine. But after everything that's happened, I am curious to come back in season 2, which is 18 months later, to see like, what do they think of her then? Like, how has she grown or changed as a police officer? Is she still that like hard set and fervent about like, is she still butting heads with them, or is like after all this time they kind of understand each other a little bit more? Like, how much do they want to like keep her on the force? Right. Like, how much is she an asset and how much is she a nuisance to them? I really want to get into what everybody thinks about Catherine and like how and why she's being kept around.
Apparently she was a higher up at one point.
I don't know if she was necessarily a higher. I don't know if she was necessarily a higher up, but she was like a. Yeah, she was like a detective.
Yeah.
She was more of like an investigator. And I think when she adopted Ryan, she needed something, I guess, a little bit more
scale back.
Regular clock in, clock out.
Yeah. Which is an interesting thing, because then as he's kind of getting to an age where maybe like she doesn't need to be there 24/7 to watch after him, maybe she can start scaling back up. It seems like she kind of wants to, as she is that incredibly thorough and is that persistent. So
and I'd be curious to see like
she goes back.
I'd be curious to see like at her age how viable of an option that career switch is.
Yeah.
Like, it might be something where it's not necessarily like prejudice against her as an older woman, but just like, no, we've just always had it on the books. Like, you kind of have to be a little bit more young and fit to have this certain position, and we're not really hiring, like, we appreciate your experience, but we're not really hiring someone that on in years for this job. Like, she could go so many places, but again, it's this like paperwork and regulation she keeps running into. So how much of that is going to block her from getting to certain places? But how much is like this queen's medal gonna let her into places she might not otherwise be?
Yeah. Yeah, she's in an interesting position, to say the least. Who knows? There's lots of stuff they could do with her character.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about with this show?
Oh. I'm going to say I really appreciated how a lot of the characters are like, you see, are genuinely good people, and when somebody messes up, they try to correct it. Like Nevison, you know, like he like he denies Kevin that raise, and he makes a snide comment at Anne, like, well, we spent all this money on her education and look what good it did her. And then she leaves the table and his wife's like, Nevison, and he's like, you're right, I shouldn't have done these things. Like, everybody makes mistakes and then really tries to course correct themselves. And then there's certain characters that are like, even if they're bad guys, there's something good to them. Like, Kevin is an absolute weasel, but it's this really sort of self-centered thing. Like, I asked for a raise, I deserve the raise, but also he just wants the best for his wife and daughters. And even somebody like Ashley Cowgill, who's this, you know, runs this drug ring, and he's ordered this kidnapping, he's still like, well, I run this little set of vacation caravans, and I have this game room. I see that Jenny is ailing. I will make sure that my game room is wheelchair accessible. So as her health continues to ail, she can still go play ping pong if she wants. Like, there's lots of little sparks of real goodness in so many of the characters. And I did not know what to do with Tommy Lee Royce for the longest time, because he seemed like just this big sour hole in the middle of everything, in the middle of all these like very fleshed out characters, and even like the worst guys still have good points to them. Like, there's a lot of grayness in the show.
Sure.
Then there's just him, who's just this, who's just irredeemable.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know what to do with it when there's so many other like good people, or like characters who you don't like, but you kind of understand. You have some speck of sympathy for them. And then there's him. And you see he's got this kind of a sliver of heart. He seems to genuinely show an interest in Ryan as his son. But also it's like, well, look at everything else that you've done, Tommy. You still like raped Anne and like stabbed all these people and like drove over Kirsten and punched your mom. Like, you're still like this black hole of sympathy, Tommy. You've still got nothing.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm baffled. I'm like, he's still here? Don't we have characters we care about who we could watch instead?
Like, he's, I mean, on one hand though, like, that is the character that everyone knows they will hate, just unanimously. This guy is piece of garbage, and we can just hate him. And that it's, I don't want to say it's poor writing, but it's a easy thing of like, hey, we know that everyone will have an emotional response to this one thing. We can use that. Which you can use that cleverly, you can use that poorly. Who knows? But yeah,
that's
it's just
one of the
just
things
like, we hate him. I don't like him. He's a monster.
Yeah, and like, that's one of the things that had me like, it's so uncomfortable through the first couple episodes, because I've seen every bad guy so far has something redeemable in him, and every time Tommy shows up, I'm like on this teetering edge, like, are they gonna throw in something that would redeem him? What could that possibly be? He seems so bad. Am I supposed to think he's bad? Am I supposed to stop and think, well, maybe there is some sliver of something viable to this human being? I'm like, I don't know how you want me to feel about this. When everybody else is painted so grayly, am I supposed to think this man is also gray?
I don't think so.
And eventually, like, it took me a couple episodes. I'm like, okay, no, he is breaking the formula of everything else you've laid down.
Mm-hmm.
He is not gray. He is a deep, dark, black pit of monstrosity. That just is what's happening. And once I figured out, okay, this is the path we're on. All right. Then I felt like I could stop, like, teetering on this edge. Like, am I waiting for something to happen with him? Oh, it just gets worse? Oh, okay. Well, at least I know what direction we're going in now.
Right. So I wanted to point out the name of the show, Happy Valley, is what the local police call Calder Valley, which is the area that the show takes place in because of its drug problem. That is something that I did not make a connection to. It was a name. The name is Happy Valley. Okay, I don't know why, but sure, let's go. There you go. I just read that off of Wikipedia. Figured
that's
that
interesting.
out.
Yeah, I figured it was just an ironic name. I didn't know that was based in like legitimate police talk from around that area.
Okay. Oh God, I had one more thing that I wanted to say. I also wanted to point out that this was created, written, and directed all by Sally Wainwright. And she had some help. She had some help directing this as well. But I think this ended up being as good as it was because of her, like, that one person, right? Like it's always fantastic when an artist or a creator can make their thing and not have it really be tainted by a million other people and like, oh well, what if we go and do this way and stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, you probably need an editor and stuff like that to help make sure you're on the right track, but I think what I'm trying to get at is the like unifying factor of like, they not only came up with the idea, but they wrote the script, so all of the scripts sound the same. They directed it so it all looks the exact same, and it is as close to the original vision of that as can be. And so I think that is partly why this show ended up being as enthralling as it was. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on Happy Valley. All right, Melissa, if you had to recommend some stuff to people, if they liked this, what else might they like? I know you're not as into the crime shows as I am.
No.
But is there something about like character work that you liked as like, oh, that reminds me of this one thing, or something else like that? You did mention the
I don't know, like everything. This reminded me of The Forest just because The Forest is the closest thing I've seen to this, but I don't know, except for the fact that they are both European crime shows in a small town starring a policewoman with family troubles. I don't know if they're really similar. And honestly, I think this is much better than The Forest.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, like if you like this, The Forest is kind of a step down. Unless you're really hungry for something slightly spooky.
Yeah.
Then there's better
it's been a
spooky
while.
crime shows out there.
It's been a while since we watched that one. I don't remember if it was a legitimate supernatural thing or not, but it seemed like it had this like spooky supernatural thing going on that like
there was
maybe
one
was there.
character, remember? It was the teacher who was like quasi supernatural, and I remember us discussing like we wish everything was slightly weird instead of it all being centered on this one character.
That's right. That's right. Let me see if I can find that one.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got another like really solid recommendation to go off of this one, because I haven't seen anything quite like this, which is a remark about both its unique high quality and also the fact that this just isn't a genre I deal with very often. Like the only other like character driven crime show I've watched has been Sherlock. I had a big soft spot for Sherlock.
Okay. We covered The Forest back on episode 34 of the Whatnauts review show. That was almost a month or almost a year ago. We covered it at the end of November back in 2018. Go check that one out if it seems like it's up your alley. I actually wanted to recommend Luther, the British crime show starring Idris Elba, because that is also, it's very intense in its crime shows. He's a very troubled person. He is a persistent detective. He will not stop. He will not give up, and it's almost to his detriment. Which kind of reminds me of Catherine in this show. They don't deal with it in the same way. Like, we don't necessarily see the effects of it on... Well, one thing we didn't mention in this show is her, like, mental breakdown, and she is seeing the dead body of her coworker that got ran over.
Yeah.
Which is something that happens in this show that we didn't really mention, but that's not that's what happens in Luther, but you deal with a lot more of the like mental state of these people. Like, are you actually fit to serve? Like, you might be actually more detrimental on the police force than you are.
I like that angle. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So I would highly recommend that. Plus, it's Idris Elba, so something good to look at.
International Dreamboat, Idris Elba.
Exactly. Melissa, it is your turn to do the pitches for what we will cover this next week. What do you got?
So we've been dealing with pretty heavy stuff for the last couple weeks. Like Harrow County, very grotesque. Ghost stories, real intense oddball. This thing, quite upsetting. So I'm going to lighten it up. I've got 3 comedy shows for us.
Nice. I'm excited.
Pitch number 1 is a these are all available on Netflix, these 3 shows I'm going to pitch to you. Pitch number 1 is a brand new original show. I don't know very much about it yet, but it stars the treasure himself, Paul Rudd.
Okay.
This is his new show, Living with Yourself.
Gotcha.
And this is a story where, burned out on life, Miles undergoes a strange procedure at a strip mall spa and wakes up to find he's been replaced by a better version of himself. So it's Paul Rudd having to deal with a duplicate better Paul Rudd.
That's very difficult because I don't know if there is anything better than Paul Rudd.
Twice the delight.
Right.
These episodes are about like 25 to 35 minutes long, and there's 8 of them.
Okay.
Just 1 season so far. And this just came out in the last couple weeks. I don't know if I've heard from anybody who has watched it yet, but it seems like a fun time. And
Sure.
I just love Paul Rudd.
Who doesn't?
Pitch number 2 is another Netflix original series. This is a sketch comedy show.
Okay.
Which we haven't done anything like this before.
Interesting.
Well, Hadron Gospel Hour is kind of a sketch show sometimes. But this is our first classic sketch TV show. This is called I Think You Should Leave. And my coworkers have been obsessed with this show lately. And they were trying to explain it to me, and they said it's like Monty Python's Flying Circus for uncomfortable, escalatingly awkward social situations.
Okay.
And there's 6
Gotcha.
episodes of this. I watched the first 3 episodes and I'm like a minute and a half in, I'm like, I get it. I get why you like this thing so much. It is about awkward social situations, but everything gets worse in this really absurd way. For example, one of the big sketches in the first episode is a man goes to a birthday party and he's asking the birthday man, "You like my gift, right? You really liked my gift?" And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah, I like the gift. Definitely going to use it." And the gift giver's like, "Well, if you liked it so much, you don't need the gift receipt anymore, do you? You can give the gift receipt back to me." And then it escalates to, "Well, if you really love the gift and you'd never replace it, I'll just eat the gift receipt." So he eats the receipt. And then he's acting sick, and the birthday guy's like, "You can't get sick from eating a receipt. This is an act." And then he ends up dying from eating a poisoned receipt. So it's very silly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 6 episodes, and they're all shorter episodes. I think they're like under 20 minutes. This is like a quick,
Gotcha.
oddball little watch. I've seen the first couple of these. It's fun.
Gotcha.
I think there's a lot here we could talk about. Pitch number 3. This is a sitcom called Schitt's Creek. This is 13 episodes in season 1. It's up to like 5 seasons now. But we're going to start with just season 1. This stars possibly my favorite actor, Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy. And they are this filthy rich couple who one day find themselves suddenly broke. I'm not exactly sure why. They had all this money, now they don't. The one asset they have left is one time they bought this tiny town as a joke. Just as a joke, they're like, "We're going to own this town," and Schitt's Creek is the name of the town. So it's this really like, riches to rags story where like they're just rich and fantastic and spoiled and have to live in a ramshackle motel in this tiny country town that they somehow own. It seems like I've seen a couple episodes of this. It's got kind of an Arrested Development type of vibe to it. Okay. Amazing actors. This is something I've heard really great things about, and I've been meaning for a while to get back and like finish the thing. It was airing on like Pop TV or some weird channel, so it was not initially very easy to watch, but now all of it's on Netflix. And like I said, season 1 is just 13 episodes.
Interesting. Okay. So pitch number 1 was Living with Yourself. Pitch number 2 was I Think You Should Leave. And pitch number 3 is season 1 of Schitt's Creek. I actually don't know. Let's see. I think comedy is one of the genres that we haven't done much of on the review show ever.
Yeah. And like I was thinking last night, like what are some of the funniest movies I've ever seen? And it's either things that are like they're just silly. Like I don't know if we could have a deep like hour to 75-minute long serious critical conversation about Airplane. Or it's something like it's a movie I think is hysterical, but I don't know if it will play for somebody else. Don't call me Shirley. Exactly. Like it would just be that for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like comedy is kind of hard to tackle in the format we usually do. So I'm like, let's go over like 2 interesting, like good, long enough sitcoms and a weird sketch show, which is something completely different. We've never tried tackling sketch before, really.
I think I'm gonna go with Living with Yourself with Paul Rudd.
Okay. Yes.
Because the sketch comedy, I've heard good things. But that's the thing that I'm worried about is like, are we gonna have enough substance to actually talk about and critique, or at least have some kind of worthwhile discussion? And then of the other 2, I think Living with Yourself is the more recent one, so that might help get some people listening since it's a brand new show. That's what we'll do. living with yourself for next week.
Awesome.
We already did all the housekeeping and stuff. So, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. You can find pictures of these beautiful desserts I'm going to try and make.
There you go. I accidentally hit the spoiler thing while we were doing that. So you got a fancy beat playing in the back around while you were like, come check out my cakes. Aha. You guys can find me at Kyle Springer on Twitter and Instagram. We are at the Whatnauts on Twitter if you guys want to stay up to date with everything that we do. And like we said, next week we will be back with Living With Yourself, season 1 of Living With Yourself. This has been episode 82 of the Whatnauts review show. We will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for checking out our show. We hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked Happy Valley, let us know what else you guys might recommend down in the comments below. 'Cause that would help out a ton for people who might want something else a lot similar. In the meantime, go subscribe to our channel right up there. Hit the button. And then go watch one of our other videos right down here, because we got a whole bunch of other podcasts for you to check out. Might be an entirely different show, like the Captain's Log or the Reactor Core. Crossplay. Who knows? Go check it out. Thanks.